Insight Quarterly Magazine. Issue 16. APR to June 2020. Compiled and edited by Justin Phillips, Sathya B. Transcribed and printed by Mitra Jyothi, in collaboration with Radio Udon. Subscription ₹100 yearly. Mitra Jyothi Digital Library. Mitra Jyothi. CA Site No. P22, 31st Main, 18th Cross, HSR Layout. Sector 1, behind NIFT College, Bangalore 560102. Phone, 080-22587623/25. Email, mj.tblibrary@gmail.com. Website www.mitrajyothi.org. Copyright notice. This book is reproduced in accessible format for people with bona fide print disabilities by Mitra Jyothi, CA Site No. P22, 18th Cross, 31st Main, Sector 1, HSR Layout, behind NIFT College, Bangalore 560-102. Phone No. 2258763/2258765, Country Code +91 Bengaluru Code 080, Email mj.tblibrary@gmail.com, Website www.mitrajyothi.org. This book is created for distribution for the print disabled only and in accordance with the Marrakesh Treaty ratified by India on July 24, 2014 and Section 52, 1, ZB, of the Copyright Act, 1957. This accessible format production of the original publication is permitted to be used only by persons with print disabilities. Any further reproduction, distribution to any person without a print disability or any commercial use of this book is strictly prohibited and will be subject to legal action. Contents. From the editor. News from Mitra Jyothi. News from Out and About. A Garland of Temples Ms. Hema Sethi. Being a Follower Drive. Rajdeep Manwani. 6. This is how Taiwan got a head start on smashing the virus. 7. How Edward Jenner developed the world's first vaccine. When time became regular and universal. What is the future of the universe? Neil Agarwal. Reward for the award Ms. Madhu Singhal. Recipe Corner Ms. Sundareswari. 1 from the editor. Dear readers. Since the last time, the new decade, why, the whole world has gone topsy-turvy. Many industries including airlines, restaurants, saloons, movie theaters, transport sector have all collapsed. Online usage has risen sharply and stay at home has become the new normal. A WhatsApp message that I received recently perfectly summarizes the irony. Never have we seen such a mess in life. The air is pure but wearing a mask is mandatory. Roads are empty but it is impossible to go on long drive. People have clean hands but there is a ban on shaking hands. Friends have time to sit together but they cannot get together. The cook inside you is crazy, but you cannot call anyone for lunch or dinner. On every Monday, the heart longs for the office but the weekend does not seem to end. Those who have money have no way to spend it. Those who don't have money have no way to earn it. There is enough time on hand but you cannot fulfill your dreams. The culprit is all around but cannot be seen. Like every coin has two sides, there have been positive changes too. Some heroes have emerged. K.K. Shailaja, Health Minister in Kerala, with 4 deaths in all, is in good company with London Breed, Mayor of San Francisco, 31 deaths so far, compared with more than 10,000 in New York City, and New Zealand's Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, 21 deaths, all women, who moved early and acted decisively to keep their population safe. Scientists from all over the world are collaborating in the search for a cure to this disease. Many labs have stopped cancer research and have switched to solving this pandemic. Quarantine has shown us what are to be the priorities in our life. In 1665, Cambridge University closed because of the plague. Isaac Newton quarantined himself at his childhood home. It was the most productive time of his life. He discovered the calculus and the laws of motion. We can only guess on the extent of great discoveries, ideas, and innovations that could arise from this ongoing crisis. This edition has articles relating to travel, time, vaccines and much more. As always, please feel free to send in articles. Untitled.editor@gmail.com is the address you have to send it to. So, till the situation in your area is free from the disease, stay home and be safe. Happy reading! Justin Phillips, Editor. 2 News from Mitra Jyothi. Mitra Jyothi completed 30 years of service in empowering the visually impaired on March 20, 2020. While we are all struggling with COVID-19 infection, we at Mitra Jyothi wanted to take out a minute and thank everyone from the bottom of our heart for their support throughout the journey. When things improve, we surely will, we can light the world. As always, Mitra Jyothi could help many visually impaired in need through different means this quarter as well. Summarizing key updates below. Accessibility Testing Course. Mitra Jyothi announced the launch of a new course, Accessibility Testing, this year for the visually impaired. Accessibility testing is a type of software testing performed to ensure that the applications or websites being tested is usable by people with disabilities like visually impaired, hearing impaired, color blindness, old age and other disadvantaged groups. Mitra Jyothi offered the first batch residential program for 5 visually impaired students from across India. Response was quite good, planning to conduct more batches in upcoming quarter. DAISY Players Distribution. National Institute for the Empowerment of Persons with Visual Disabilities, NIEPD, is always supporting Mitra Jyothi and many organizations in DAISY Players Distribution under a DIP scheme. With the support of NIEPD, we have distributed around 50 DAISY players this quarter and trained the beneficiaries for effective usage. 3 days awareness workshop for visually impaired people at Mitra Jyothi. We have conducted a 3 days, 5th to end March 7, 2020, workshop on creating awareness for visually impaired people on a set of important aspects. About 30 participants were attended the event. The workshop was conducted with the support of National Aerospace Laboratories, NAL, Bangalore, and the officials from NAL have addressed the beneficiaries during the inaugural session. The list of sessions conducted are given below. Introduction and demonstration of various assistive devices for 6 people with support of NFB, Bangalore. Out of the 20-odd products, audio labeler was well appreciated by participants. Many stated that they were not aware such devices are available which can ease their life. A talk on low vision aspects and assistive devices. This session by a doctor changed the view of low vision candidates totally. Demonstration of Kibo app and Kibo scanner. Participants were thrilled to read hard books by themselves and few tried reading their debit card details as well. Self-defense overview and techniques. Mitra Jyothi team in collaboration with Jesura Disability Trust is conducting this training for more than a year. As part of the workshop, overview and certain theoretical aspects are covered for the participants to be aware and be safe. Legal literacy and RPD overview. Out of all the sessions, this was the well-utilized one by participants. Lawyer covered from basic aspects of law to be known by everyone as a general public and then gave RPD overview. Career readiness session. Government jobs being looked at as a secured one among persons with disabilities, one reason being lower confidence level to face interviews and group discussions. To help the candidates to overcome this, Mitra Jyothi team arranged for this session in collaboration with Winvanaya Foundation. Mock interviews and group discussions were arranged. Few participants were scared to face the mock as well. But post the workshop, they stated that they have clarity around private hiring process and will take it up for sure without second thought. As you know, World Braille Day is celebrated every year on January 4 on the occasion of Louis Braille's birthday to honor his invention of Braille script. Mitra Jyothi announced a Braille writing competition for its staff, volunteers, and interns on the World Braille Day. Preparations started a few days before the competition. Those who did not know Braille started learning it, and those who knew it were seen practicing it. Even with the letters displayed in front of them, they found the task quite challenging and difficult. Their excitement and enthusiasm was unsurpassable. As rightly said by one of our staff members, the competition was an eye-opening experience for us sighted people. We now understand the effort which goes into becoming a Braille literate. Another one added, we are now more confident in talking about and spreading the word about the importance of Braille for visually impaired. Looking forward to identify more needs and serve through possible means in upcoming quarter as well. Wish our visually impaired friends to stay safe and be more cautious during this tough time. Follow us on our Facebook page at https://www.facebook.com/mitrajyothi.org/. 3 News from out and about. This 1,000-year-old mill has resumed production due to demand for flour. Dorset, England's decommissioned Sturminster Newton Mill is a local tourist attraction. Now it's back in the flour business for the first time in 50 years. The Sturminster Newton Mill is an ancient flour mill that serenely stands on the River Stour in Dorset, England. It's a fully operational wooden water mill, the kind of benignly historical site where groups of British school children are willing to display an interest in its circa 1611 construction and its souvenir tea towels if it means getting a day out. The Sturminster Newton Heritage Trust describes it as a wonderful piece of industrial archaeology, and points out that there has been a mill on this same site since 1016. Yes, for 1004 years. That's not a typo. It produced flour on an industrial scale until 1970, and then was retired into a full-time tourist attraction, although it still makes a small amount of flour for visitors to buy in the gift shop or sample during their guided tours. But the mill is currently closed to guests due to, well, you know, and yet it's also busier than it's been in almost 50 years. According to the Bournemouth Daily Echo, millers Pete Loosemore and Imogen Bittner decided that, due to the current demand for flour and the loss of income from visitors, this would be a good time to re-embrace the mill's commercial production capabilities. In its first fully functional 10-day period, they milled a ton of wheat. Under normal circumstances, that would have been a year's worth. As a result, it has already been able to deliver 203-pound bags of flour to local stores and bakeries. We would have been milling, on the whole, about 2 days each month. That would have supplied us with enough flour to keep going throughout the whole of the season, Loosemore told the BBC. It's been nice to bring the place truly back to life and back into something like it used to be when it was working 6 days a week. Loosemore would probably know what that was like. His grandfather spent 50 years as the miller on that same site. We're only doing this while the crisis lasts, and it's not only helping us but the local community because there is a shortage of flour, Bittner said. In one way we have an advantage over the bigger mills, which are used to sell large sacks to the wholesale trade and don't have the machinery or manpower to put the flour into small bags. The town of Sturminster celebrated 1,000 years of milling heritage in 2016, which local historians said was an accurate anniversary because of a combination of the assets that were part of King Edmund Ironside's Newton Castle, and by the agricultural records in the Domesday Book, written in 1086, that mentioned the town's 4 existing mills. After literally witnessing 1,000 years of history, it seems fitting that the mill would have a part in this undeniably historic event that we're all currently living through now. Monash University researchers have developed the world's most efficient lithium-sulfur battery, capable of powering a smartphone for 5 continuous days. 1 prototype cells have been developed in Germany. Further testing in cars and solar grids to take place in Australia in 2020. 2 researchers have a filed patent on the manufacturing process, and will capture a large share of Australia's lithium chain. Imagine having access to a battery, which has the potential to power your phone for 5 continuous days, or enable an electric vehicle to drive more than 1,000 kilometers without needing to refuel. Monash University researchers are on the brink of commercializing the world's most efficient lithium-sulfur (LiS) battery, which could outperform current market leaders by more than 4 times, and power Australia and other global markets well into the future. Dr. Modak Shaibani from Monash University's Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering led an international research team that developed an ultra-high-capacity LiS battery that has better performance and less environmental impact than current lithium-ion products. The researchers have an approved filed patent, PCT/O2019/051239, for their manufacturing process, and prototype cells have been successfully fabricated by German R&D partners Fraunhofer Institute for Material and Beam Technology. Some of the world's largest manufacturers of lithium batteries in China and Europe have expressed interest in upscaling production, with further testing to take place in Australia in early 2020. Professor Mainak Majumdar said this development was a breakthrough for Australian industry and could transform the way phones, cars, computers and solar grids are manufactured in the future. Successful fabrication and implementation of LiS batteries in cars and grids will capture a more significant part of the estimated $213 billion value chain of Australian lithium, and will revolutionise the Australian vehicle market and provide all Australians with a cleaner and more reliable energy market, Professor Majumdar said. Our research team has received more than $2.5 million in funding from government and international industry partners to trial this battery technology in cars and grids from this year, which we're most excited about. Using the same materials in standard lithium-ion batteries, researchers reconfigured the design of sulfur cathodes so they could accommodate higher stress loads without a drop in overall capacity or performance. Inspired by unique bridging architecture first recorded in processing detergent powders in the 1970s, the team engineered a method that created bonds between particles to accommodate stress and deliver a level of stability not seen in any battery to date. Attractive performance, along with lower manufacturing costs, abundant supply of material, ease of processing and reduced environmental footprint make this new battery design attractive for future real-world applications, according to Associate Professor Matthew Hill. This approach not only favors high-performance metrics and long cycle life, but is also simple and extremely low cost to manufacture, using water-based processes, and can lead to significant reductions in environmentally hazardous waste, Associate Professor Hill said. Wearable smartband to help enforce social distancing. Scientists have developed a wearable smartband that can monitor body temperatures and alert users when they are standing too close to another person. The prototype, called I Feel You, developed by researchers at IIT Istituto Italiano di Tecnologia in Italy, has been designed to find a practical and cost-effective solution to help people respect social distancing during work and other activities, especially when lockdown restrictions are lifted in countries. The smartband was initially developed for monitoring human body parameters in human-robot collaboration scenarios. It uses algorithms and technologies that researchers introduced in a suit that can detect and measure the whole human body posture. This smartband releases radio signals that can detect another band which is in close proximity. The two bands then vibrate, emitting an alert signal that helps people respect social distancing. The device can be used where smartphones and thermal cameras are not viable solutions, such as tourist villages, resorts, sporting club or amusement parks. Vaccine via painless skin patch to be tested in mice. A US-based biopharmaceutical company has developed a potential vaccine for COVID-19 that can be delivered through a painless skin patch. Vernderies VaxiPatch is a single-dose vaccination kit that uses a patch with a metal microneedle array to deliver vaccines. The technology eliminates the need for refrigeration, facilitates high-volume, automated manufacturing of vaccines and can be self-administered. The company, in collaboration with the University of California, Davis, is planning to carry out preclinical tests for the vaccine in mice. If the preclinical testing meets safety and efficacy goals, Phase 1 human clinical trials could begin. Dogs' noses just got a bit more amazing. Not only are they up to 100 million times more sensitive than ours, they can sense weak thermal radiation, the body heat of mammalian prey, a new study reveals. The find helps explain how canines with impaired sight, hearing, or smell can still hunt successfully. It's a fascinating discovery, says Mark Beckhoff, an ethologist, expert on canine sniffing, and professor emeritus at the University of Colorado, Boulder, who was not involved in the study. It provides yet another window into the sensory worlds of dogs' highly evolved cold noses. The ability to sense weak, radiating heat is known in only a handful of animals. Black fire beetles, certain snakes, and one species of mammal, the common vampire bat, all of which use it to hunt prey. Most mammals have naked, smooth skin on the tips of their noses around the nostrils, an area called the rhinarium. But dogs' rhinarium are moist, colder than the ambient temperature, and richly endowed with nerves, all of which suggests an ability to detect not just smell, but heat. To test the idea, researchers at Lund University and Eötvös Lorand University trained 3 pet dogs to choose between a warm, 31 degrees Celsius, and an ambient temperature object, each placed 1.6 meters away. The dogs weren't able to see or smell the difference between these objects. Scientists could only detect the difference by touching the surfaces. After training, the dogs were tested on their skill in double-blind experiments. All 3 successfully detected the objects emitting weak thermal radiation, the scientists reveal today in scientific reports. Next, the researchers scanned the brains of 13 pet dogs of various breeds in a functional magnetic resonance imaging scanner while presenting the pooches with objects emitting neutral or weak thermal radiation. The left somatosensory cortex in dogs' brains, which delivers inputs from the nose, was more responsive to the warm thermal stimulus than to the neutral one. The scientists identified a cluster of 14 voxels, 3D pixels, in this region of the dog's left hemispheres, but didn't find any such clusters in the right, and none in any part of the dog's brains in response to the neutral stimulus. Together, the 2 experiments show that dogs, like vampire bats, can sense weak hot spots and that a specific region of their brains is activated by this infrared radiation, the scientists say. They suspect dogs inherited the ability from their ancestor, the gray wolf, who may use it to sniff out warm bodies during a hunt. Data speeds to soar with aid of mini magnets. Chemists have studied a new magnetic material that could boost the storage capacity and processing speed of hard drives used in cloud-based servers. This could enable people using cloud data systems to load large files in seconds instead of minutes, researchers say. A team led by Edinburgh scientists created the material known as a single-molecule magnet in the lab. They discovered that a chemical bond that gives the compound its magnetic properties can be controlled by shining rapid pulses from a laser on it. The compound is composed mainly of the element manganese, which is named after the Latin word magnus, which means magnet. The team's findings suggest that data could be stored and accessed on the magnets using laser pulses lasting 1/millionth of a billionth of a second. They estimate this could enable hard drives fitted with the magnets to process data up to 100 times faster than current technologies. The development could also improve the energy efficiency of cloud computing systems, the team says, which collectively emit as much carbon as the aviation industry. Existing hard drives store data using a magnetic field generated by passing an electric current through a wire, which generates a lot of heat, researchers say. Replacing this with a laser-activated mechanism would be more energy efficient as it does not produce heat. There is an ever-increasing need to develop new ways of improving data storage devices. Our findings could increase the capacity and energy efficiency of hard drives used in cloud-based storage servers, which require tremendous amounts of power to operate and keep cool. This work could help scientists develop the next generation of data storage devices. For a garland of temples, I went on a trip with my friends for the very first time. I went with my friend Kranti and her family and Balaji. We began our journey on December 21, 2019. My friends came to my house and picked me up. Our first unplanned destination via the Nice Road, thanks to Kranti's husband, brought us to Ranganatha Temple. The ancient structure, known as Lakshmi Ranganatha Kshetra, was built by the Cholas in the 12th century. It was renovated several times by successive rulers and local chieftains in the region. The temple is situated near Magadhi Road, which is 6 km from Magadhi town and 45 km from Bangalore. We had darshan of Ranganathaswamy and Andal. And as we had visited in the month of Dhanurmasam, they had decorated Andal very beautifully. I did meditation for some time. They distributed Pongal Prasad. It was very tasty. We even purchased cucumber, which that area is famous for. Later, we went to Savandurga Sri Lakshmi Narasimhaswamy Temple. The idol of Lord Narasimha has been worshipped for many generations. It is nearby Ramanagara. There are two important, ancient temples, that of Lord Virabhadra Swami and Sri Lakshmi Narasimha Swami, which attract devotees from all over the land. It is on a hill. People even go for trekking in the surrounding area, a state forest with scrub and dry deciduous trees covering 27 kilometers. It is a very peaceful area. Our next stop was at the Nambai Narayana Temple at Thondanar near Mandya. It was built during the 12th century by Vishnuvardhana to commemorate his victory over the Cholas at Talakadu. The inscription of the 12th century is in Tamil. The idol installed in the sanctum is known as Mulavar, Lakshmi Narayana, or Nambai Narayana. It is facing east in a standing posture. We were in scenic and serene surroundings, in the midst of rolling hills, expansive fields, and clear blue waters. The village of Thondanar was named by Ramanujakarya, the 11th century, Vaishnavite philosopher saint who stayed here for many years after leaving Srirangam in Tamil Nadu. The village, also referred to as Yadeva Narayana Chaturvedi Mangalam, has a sprawling man-made lake. Legend has it that its water has never dried up since its creation, even in severe drought conditions. According to records, when Tipu Sultan visited the lake, he saw pebbles through its clear waters and named the lake Moti Talab, or the Lake of Pearls. Legend has it that the idol of Narasimha was installed in the Treta Yuga by Prahalada, a steadfast devotee of Vishnu. We see a rare image of Ramanujakarya here, an idol that the Acharya himself installed in the temple before he left for Srirangam. There is a strong belief that whoever invokes the blessing of Yoga Narasimha here, will have his or her wishes fulfilled. The Garbhagriha is adorned with a tall east-facing idol of Nambai Narayana, the presiding deity with conch in the right hand and discus in the left hand. Then we visited the Venugopalaswamy Temple, where we can see Krishna in a dancing posture. We went to the Ramanuja idol. It was in an open place surrounded by stones and plants. I felt a bit like trekking. A visit to Bhuvarahaswamy Temple was next on our agenda. It is said that Bhuvarahaswamy Temple is more than 2,500 years old. The great sage Gautama is supposed to have performed penance at this temple, and that is why the temple has significance among the locals. The village Kalhali is located on the Bangalore-Mysore highway. If you have a wish of an own house, a darshan to this place will fulfill that wish, it is said. People bring a few bricks and do puja and use those bricks in their house construction. After darshan, we had prasad there at the temple. We next headed towards Melkote. From a long time, I had a desire to go there, and I had really a good experience when we visited Melkote. Melkote, which is also known as Thirunarayanapura, has been mentioned in some literary texts. The Kelavanarayanaswamy Temple was developed under the patronage of the Mysore Wadyars. Earlier, the Vaishnava saint Sri Ramanujakarya had come to Melkote and had settled here for 12 years. It is built on rocky hills and is known by Yadugiri, Yadavagiri, or Yadushladhipa, overlooking the Kaveri Valley. The collection of crowns and jewels are brought to the temple for its annual celebrations. On the top of the hill is the temple of Yoga Narasimha. Many more shrines and ponds are located in the town. Melkote is also home to the Academy of Sanskrit Research, which has collected thousands of Vedic and Sanskrit manuscripts. First, we went to Kalyani where we touched the water. A movie shooting was going on near Kalyani. We climbed around 300 steps to reach the top of the hill and had darshan of Yoganarasimha. Melkote is famous for puliogare. We purchased puliogare and puliogare paste. Around 6:30 p.m., we headed towards Kupka Subramaniya. Reached Kupka around 11:30 p.m. and halted there for the night. Got up in the morning and went to darshan of Subramaniya. This temple, located in the village of Subramaniya, has Kartikeya being worshipped as Subramaniya, Lord of all serpents. Epics relate that the divine serpent Vasuki and other serpents found refuge under Subramaniya when threatened by the Garuda. Kupka Subramania, one among the 7 holy places created by Parashurama, is mythologically and historically famous for practices related to Nagadasha, and lores attached to them are way beyond our logic. There is a river flowing in front of the temple. People bathe in this river and go for darshan. The morning was very cool and we had a nice darshan. As we visited early in the morning, the rush was very less. Outside the temple, we purchased few items for friends and family. We also went to the old Mula Subramaniya temple. If it is silent, people can hear the hissing sounds of snakes. We had our breakfast and moved towards Dharmasthala. Having had a very heavy breakfast, I slept off during the journey. It was 11:30 when we reached Dharmasthala. The temple was overcrowded. Using the provision for the disabled to have direct darshan, we had a darshan within 20 minutes. After darshan of Manjunathaswamy we went to the Gomateswara idol. It is in Dharmasthala itself. I am not sure of its height, maybe around 30 feet. People visit this place for photos. When I was there last time, there was a very beautiful park. However, this time, due to lack of water, all plants were withered. Our next destination was Katil, my favorite place. Katil or Katilu is a temple town in the Dakshina Kannada district of Karnataka, primarily known for a temple dedicated to Sri Durgaparmeshwari Devi. The beauty of this temple is that it is situated on an islet, right in the middle of the sacred river Nandini. Unfortunately, at this time there was no water in the river. The Bhajan program was going on. Usually they will distribute black bangles to female devotees. In all Karnataka temples, they will serve food. As we had visited on a Ekadasi day, instead of rice, they served avalaki and payasam for us. Later, we went to the abode of the deity Guru Narasimha made of the sacred Salagrama stone. The name of the place Salagrama is attributed to a legend. The deity has a shankha, conch, in one hand and a chakra, disc, in another. It is seated in a yogic posture attributing to the name Yogananda Guru Narasimha. According to Padma Purana, the deity of Guru Narasimha appeared at the bottom of a peepal tree holding shankha, conch, and chakra, disc, in its hands. Narada Muni, who had heard this through an Akashavani, celestial message, installed the deity of Guru Narasimha. The Akashavani described the deity as Yogananda Narasimha Kam according to the Sahyadri Kanda of the Skanda Purana. Lokaditya, the son of Mayura Varma of the Kadamba dynasty, came along with his army and a group of Brahmins headed by a great man called Bhattacharya. The priests performed Mahayagas like Poundra, Atiratra, etc., at the request of the king. The blessings of Mahaganapatha had been invoked at the start of the yagnas. Ganapathy appeared in the dreams of Bhattacharya with 10 hands and told him to reinstall the deity of Lord Yogananda Narasimha, and from henceforth Narasimha himself shall be the Guru and God for the Brahmins of the 14 villages surrounding the temple. To this day, the Brahmins of these 14 villages, known as Kota Brahmins, who follow Guru Narasimha as their sole Guru. The temple was closed by the time we reached there. We stayed for 2 minutes and headed to Anagadvinayaka temple. We also visited another Durgapur Ramaswari Temple nearby. This is a new temple recently constructed. It is built in 5 acres of land. It is wheelchair accessible. Here even pillars are made of wood. An NRI has built this temple. It has an open place, big prayer halls and a lake. Here the Durga is Shantaswarupini decorated with ornaments. I liked this place very much. It is located in a very peaceful area. Our next destination was the Brahmalan Jesura Temple. According to the Skanda Purana, goddess Mukombika performed a Marana Homa here after killing Mukajura. After slaying the demon, the Divine Mother granted divinity to the demon's soul and blessed him to be known as Brahmalaneshwara. The temple faces east while the sanctorum faces the north. By the sides of the sanctorum, the main Lord Brahmalaneshwara, there are Malayala Yakshi and Vada Yakshi and also 2 Dwarapalakas. To the right of the sanctorum, there is a cat, colloquial Kannada, in which Sri Chakra Yantra is established by Adi Shankara. Beside the Brahmalaneshwara Gudi there is a Devadhamane of Hashagili, who came from Kashi or Varanasi, Hagili, Chiku and other Parivara Devas. There is a mother-son relationship between goddess Mukombika and Sri Brahmalaneshwara. Next, we went to Kuluremukombike Temple. The never-drying river Saparnika lies just beside the Mukombika Temple. According to folklore, this temple is the only one that is dedicated to Parvati, the goddess. The creation of this temple is believed to have been done by Parashurama. History has it that Parvati killed Kamsajaran, who had become powerful through his penance while staying there. Virabhadra, Shiva, and Ganapatha helped the goddess successfully to make Kamsajara dumb. This is how he started to be called Mukasuran. This name was given to him because Mukha means dumb. Eventually, Parvati killed him with her chakra. This incident took place in the night of Shukla Ashtami. After this, Devi came to be popularly known as Kulur Devi Mukombika. The divine energy of the Devi came to be worshipped with the lingam by Kola Maharishi. When you visit the temple, you will be able to see this lingam as the main deity. Worshippers call this Jyothir lingam. Devi Mukombika has 4 arms and 3 eyes. In her hands, she has the divine disc and conch. We then went to Kumalashile Durgapur Ramaswari Temple. The name Kumalashile takes after the stone linga. Goddess Sri Brahmi Durgapur Ramaswari is worshipped in the form of a linga, which is said to be convergence of goddesses Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, and Mahasaraswati. We reached around 7:30 p.m. while the Chindi Homa was going on. Later, they performed Kumbhabhishekam followed by dinner. The food was very tasty with 3 sweets served. We stayed in the temple rooms. Next day, we got up and had darshan of goddess and went to the tiger cave. People say that sometimes tiger will appear but won't harm anyone. It will come to the cave, do puja, and go. The cave is located around 300 meters away from the temple. I did not go into the cave for it was pitch dark and full of stones and thorns. I remained in the car itself. Had our breakfast and visited Sagandar. Usually, people love to go to Sagandar by launch from Sagara. Being short of time, we went by road. Sagandar Kshetra is near to Thumari, 42 kilometers from Sagara town. Mother Chidshwari is called as Saganjarshwari. The idol of Mother Saganjarshwari is very old and was found on the banks of the holy Sharavathi river 300 years ago. Even though it was Monday, it was crowded. We purchased special tickets and had darshan of the goddess. Around 11 am, we left Sagandar for Gokarna. Traveling through dense forests, we reached Gokarna around 3:30 p.m. We had lunch and went to the temple. We came to know that the temple would open at 5 p.m. So off we went to the OM beach. We had to descend many steps to reach the beach. We went to another beach near the temple also. We played in the beach for some time and took a ride in a motor boat. I got scared. Back at the temple, it being Monday and Triadashi, Pradosha Puja was done in Shiva temples. It was very crowded. We purchased Kshira Abhisheka tickets. One of the priests helped us to perform the puja. He took us near the lingam and assisted us to do Abhishekam. We touched the Jyotirlingam. I was very happy. After darshan, we savored ice cream and began our return journey around 6:30 p.m. We had dinner at Sursai around 8:30 p.m. Traveling the whole night, we reached my home on the 24th at 5:30 a.m. It was really a very nice experience. I am very thankful to Kranti's family. Other than my family, I am very comfortable traveling with her. She understands my limitations. All her family members were very helpful. We all traveled around 1,800 kilometers and made 1,800 memories. Hema Sethi works for Kotak Mahindra in Bangalore. 5. Being a follower. A few years ago when addressing a Lions Club, on public speaking, I found one person in the audience giving me encouraging sounds enthusiastically and was in agreement with all I said. I was pleased, and a little later in the day when calling the members to come and speak, turned to this enthusiastic member and asked him to come to the podium and give a talk. He shook his head. "Why not?" I asked. "Sir," he said with a smile, "I'm a good listener, not a good speaker." I was about to encourage him to come forward, when I suddenly realized that it was indeed so, that man had spurred me on through my speech, had encouraged me with his smile and got the best out of me with his attentiveness. He was indeed a good listener, and maybe public speaking was not his cup of tea. A young woman was filling out an application for college when she came across the question, "Are you a leader?" She thought she had better be brutally honest, so she answered, "No." She was convinced when she sent the application in that she'd never hear from them because of that answer. But she received a letter back from the school that read, "We have reviewed numerous applications and, to date, there will be some 1,452 new leaders attending school next year. We have decided to accept your application because we felt it was imperative that they have at least one follower." A man bought a sign and put it on his office door. It read, "I'm the boss." The next day he came to work, he noticed that someone had written underneath, "Your wife called. She wants her sign back." We can't all be the boss. And what good are leaders without followers? In actuality, we need to be both. Sometimes we lead, sometimes we follow. We lead by example, but we still follow role models. We lead by sharing our expertise, but we remain open to the wisdom of others. There are numerous courses and lessons on leadership. Yet the best leaders are also excellent followers. They know how to listen, they respect and follow great ideas from those around them, and they are humble enough to seek help when it's needed. You may be the boss, but do you know how to follow? This world could use a few good followers. I end with the same story I used in that particular Lions meeting, the story of Jamie. Jamie was a little 6-year-old boy, and one day he told his mother that he was going to audition for a class play. His mother was quite tense through the next day, hoping her son would get a good role. She went in the evening to pick Jamie up from school and waited outside the gates for Jamie to come out. The bell rang, the doors opened, and Jamie was the first one to rush out straight into his mother's arms. "Mother," he shouted, "I've been chosen to clap and cheer." In a crowded world of leaders, we desperately need followers. Dr. Rajdeep Manwani teaches at the Mahavir Jain College, Bangalore. 6. This is how Taiwan got a head start on smashing the virus. Before the coronavirus even registered on the radars of other governments, Taiwan was testing and quarantining travelers from Wuhan, China. The island's fraught, but still close, networks with China gave it a ringside view to the original epicenter of the now global pandemic, enabling it to act early in deploying a containment strategy that has proven one of the most successful in the world. Taiwan, which started containment measures on December 31, has seen just 6 deaths despite its proximity to China. That quick reaction was prompted by an internet bulletin board post read earlier that morning by Philip Lowe, a senior government health official. Because of frequent cross-strait exchanges in areas such as trade, investment, and employment, Taiwan excels at monitoring Chinese government and society through news organizations, blogs, and social media. The WeChat and Weibo platforms proved useful in tracking an outbreak of pneumonic plague last year, said Lowe, Deputy Director General at the Centers for Disease Control. Taiwan is a sentinel for China's epidemic, he said. We can send an alarm to the world relates to this is how Taiwan got a head start on smashing the virus. The rapid response is credited with minimizing Taiwan's infections, even with China sitting less than 100 miles away. As of Thursday, the island of about 24 million people had 440 confirmed COVID-19 cases, with 6 deaths, among the lowest totals in the world. By comparison, Australia, with a similar-sized population, reported 6,895 confirmed cases and 97 deaths. Singapore, with only about 6 million people, has 20,000 plus cases and 20 deaths. We treated the virus as a serious epidemic from day one, Lowe said. We didn't wait till it broke out to take action. According to Lowe, he rang the alarm bell after waking up at 5:30 a.m. on New Year's Eve and going online to check social media. His Line Corp. contacts passed around an entry from PTT, Taiwan's version of Reddit Inc. that summarized text messages and social media posts from medical professionals in China warning about a new and unknown strain of pneumonia. One of the summaries was written by Li Wenliang, a Chinese doctor later sanctioned by the government for being a whistleblower about the outbreak. He eventually died from COVID-19 and became somewhat of a folk hero on Chinese social media. About 3 hours after Lowe read that post, his agency sent an email to its counterpart in Beijing asking for details, and that afternoon Wuhan's health committee issued a press release saying about 27 people were infected with an unknown virus. Taiwanese health officials also emailed the World Health Organization, telling it that some Chinese patients had been isolated for treatment, a clear signal, in Taipei's view, that this new infection was transmittable from person to person. History motivates Taiwan's vigilance. The 2003 outbreak of SARS, or severe acute respiratory syndrome, severely hit the island and gave it the third most infections in the world. That made Taiwan strengthen its preparation for the next epidemic, including setting up an infectious disease prevention network and holding annual drills with hospitals. Taiwan has prepared for the epidemic battle for 17 years, Lowe said. Because people infected by COVID-19 can be asymptomatic, the virus poses a greater challenge than SARS, said Chuang Yinqing, a regional commander in the Infectious Diseases Prevention and Treatment Network. The island uses technology to trace suspected cases and deploys measures such as quarantine hotels and cabs. It also maintains a stockpile of face masks, medical officers and lab capacity to handle any outbreaks. Taiwan has a well-trained army against the virus, Chuang said. After Lowe's agency emailed Beijing and the WHO, he checked the island's air traffic with Wuhan and discovered there were 12 direct flights a week. Officials started testing arrivals from the city that evening, and passengers with fever symptoms immediately were hospitalized. Taiwan health officials then flew to Wuhan on January 12, more than a week before the first WHO delegation arrived for a briefing from colleagues at China's Disease Control Agency. The Chinese officials reported 41 confirmed cases, of which 28 were related to an outdoor market selling live animals. The other 13 were not a marker of human-to-human transmission. These signs alerted us that we should be cautious about the situation in China, Chuang said. Someone asked me if we can downgrade the prevention measures such as temperature checks at the airport gate, and I said, no, we should upgrade it. At that time, Wuhan still was an open city full of energy, and just a few people wore face masks at the airport, he said. By January 20, Taiwan CDC set up an emergency command center to monitor regional outbreaks, and the island confirmed its first imported infection the next day. With the Lunar New Year about to start, Taiwan suspended all direct flights with Wuhan. It then banned entry for all Chinese residents starting in early February, making it among the first places globally to do so. The WHO didn't declare the outbreak a global emergency until January 31 after maintaining it was a local crisis. Even with that declaration, it didn't recommend limits on travel and trade. Taiwanese Foreign Minister Joseph Wu has criticized the WHO's handling of the coronavirus pandemic. If we had followed guidance from the WHO, we would have fallen behind, Lo said. We wanted to be on top of the virus's development right from the beginning. By Cindy Wong and Samson Ellis, Bloomberg News. 7. How Edward Jenner developed the world's first vaccine. To develop a vaccine against novel coronavirus is a challenge, but the history of vaccination, which revolutionized global health, gives us hope. It is no secret that vaccinations have revolutionized global health. Arguably the single most life-saving innovation in the history of medicine, vaccines have eradicated smallpox, slashed child mortality rates, and prevented lifelong disabilities. Possibly lesser known, however, are the historic events and pioneers we can today thank for not only saving millions of lives each year, but for laying the foundations of future vaccine development, something that is front of mind as the world rushes to make a viable coronavirus vaccine. Early attempts to inoculate people against smallpox, one of history's most feared illnesses, with a death rate of 30%, were reported in China as early as the 16th century. Smallpox scabs could be ground up and blown into the recipient's nostrils or scratched into their skin. The practice, known as variolation, came into fashion in Europe in 1721, with the endorsement of English aristocrat Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, but was later met with public outcry after it transpired 2 to 3% of people died after inoculation, and further outbreaks were triggered. The next iteration of inoculation, which turned out to be much safer than variolation, originated from the observation that dairy farmers did not catch smallpox. The 18th century English physician, Edward Jenner, hypothesized that prior infection with cowpox, a mild illness spread from cattle, might be responsible for the suspected protection against smallpox. And so, he set to work on a series of experiments, now considered the birth of immunology, vaccine therapy, and preventive health. In 1796, Jenner inoculated an 8-year-old boy by taking pus from the cowpox lesions on a milkmaid's hands and introducing the fluid into a cut he made in the boy's arm. 6 weeks later, Jenner exposed the boy to smallpox, but he did not develop the infection then, or on 20 subsequent exposures. In the years that followed, Jenner collected evidence from a further 23 patients infected or inoculated with the cowpox virus, to support his theory that immunity to cowpox did indeed provide protection against smallpox. The earliest vaccination, the origin of the term coming from the Latin for cow, vacca, was born. Jenner's vaccination quickly became the major means of preventing smallpox around the world, even becoming mandatory in some countries. Almost a century after Jenner developed his technique, in 1885, the French biologist, Louis Pasteur, saved a 9-year-old boy's life after he was bitten by a rabid dog, by injecting him with a weakened form of the rabies virus each day for 13 days. The boy never developed rabies and the treatment was heralded a success. Pasteur coined his therapy a rabies vaccine, expanding the meaning of vaccine beyond its origin. The global influence of Louis Pasteur led to the expansion of the term vaccine to include a long list of treatments containing live, weakened, or killed viruses, typically given in the form of an injection, to produce immunity against an infectious disease. Scientific advances in the first half of the 20th century led to an explosion of vaccines that protected against whooping cough, 1914, diphtheria, 1926, tetanus, 1938, influenza, 1945, and mumps, 1948. Thanks to new manufacturing techniques, vaccine production could be scaled up by the late 1940s, setting global vaccination and disease eradication efforts in motion. Vaccines against polio, 1955, measles, 1963, rubella, 1969, and other viruses were added to the list over the decades that followed, and worldwide vaccination rates shot up dramatically thanks to successful global health campaigns. The world was announced smallpox-free in 1980, the first of many big vaccine success stories, but there was still a long way to go with other infectious diseases. By the late 1990s, the progress of international immunization programs was stalling. Nearly 30 million children in developing countries were not fully immunized against deadly diseases, and many others weren't immunized at all. The problem was that new vaccines were becoming available but developing countries simply could not afford them. In response, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and partners came together in 2000 to set up the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, now called Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. The aim was to encourage manufacturers to lower vaccine prices for the poorest countries in return for long-term, high-volume, and predictable demand from those countries. Since its launch, child deaths have halved, and 13 million deaths have been prevented. Protecting against long-standing illnesses will continue to be important in the decades and centuries ahead, but the work is not complete. In order to protect the world against infectious diseases, we need a mechanism to monitor new viruses, and rapidly develop vaccines against the most dangerous emerging infections. The devastating 2014-2015 Ebola virus was a wake-up call for how ill-prepared the world was to handle such an epidemic. A vaccine was eventually approved but came too late for the thousands of people who lost their lives. In response, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovation, CEPI, was launched at Davos in 2017, a global partnership between public, private, philanthropic, and civil society organizations working to accelerate the development of vaccines against emerging infectious diseases and enable equitable access to these vaccines for affected populations during outbreaks. We've come a long way since the risky and gruesome early inoculation efforts 5 centuries ago. Scientific innovation, widespread global health campaigns, and new public-private partnerships are literally lifesavers. Finding a vaccine to protect the world against the new coronavirus is an enormous challenge, but if there's one thing we can learn from history, it's that there is reason for hope. This article was originally published in World Economic Forum, 8 when time became regular and universal. What year is it? It's 2020, obviously. An easy question. Last year was 2019. Next year will be 2021. We are confident that a century ago it was 1920, and in 1,000 years it will be 3020, if there is anyone left to name it. All of us are fluent with these years. We, and most of the world, use them without thinking. They are ubiquitous. As a child I used to line up my pennies by year of minting, and now I carefully note dates of publication in my scholarly articles. Now, imagine inhabiting a world without such a numbered timeline for ordering current events, memories, and future hopes. For from earliest recorded history right up to the years after Alexander the Great's conquests in the late 4th century BCE, historical time, the public and annual marking of the passage of years could be measured only in 3 ways. By unique events, by annual offices, or by royal life cycles. In ancient Mesopotamia, years could be designated by an outstanding event of the preceding 12 months. Something could be said to happen, for instance, in the year when King Naram-Sin reached the sources of the Tigris and Euphrates River, or when King Enlil-Bani made for the god Ninurta 3 very large copper statues. Alternatively, events could be dated by giving the name of the holder of an annual office of state. Something happened in the year when two named Romans were consuls, or when an elite Athenian was chief magistrate, and so on. Finally, and most commonly in the kingdoms of antiquity, events could be dated by counting the throne year of the monarch. The 5th year of Alexander the Great, the 40th year of King Nebuchadnezzar II, and so on. Each of these systems was geographically localized. There was no transcendent or translocal system for locating oneself in the flow of history. How could one synchronize events at geographical distance, or between states? Take the example of the Peloponnesian War, fought between Athens and Sparta in the last third of the 5th century BCE. This is how the great Athenian historian Thucydides attempted to date its outbreak. The 30 Years' Peace, which was entered into after the conquest of Euboea, lasted 14 years. In the 15th year, in the 48th year of the priesthood of Chrysis at Argos, and when Aeneas was magistrate at Sparta, and there still being 2 months left of the magistracy of Pythodorus at Athens, 6 months after the battle of Potidaea, and at the beginning of spring, a Theban force a little over 300 strong at about the first watch of the night made an armed entry into Plataea, a Boeotian town in alliance with Athens. Where we would write, simply, 431 BCE, Thucydides was obliged to synchronize the first shot of war to non-overlapping diplomatic, religious, civic, military, seasonal, and hourly data points. The dates are intimately tied to central state institutions, dependent on bureaucratic list-making, applicable only within a self-limiting geography, and highly sensitive to political change. Indeed, they are not really dates at all, so much as synchronisms between multiple events, coordinating a network of better and lesser-known occurrences. What is being dated, and what dates it, belong to the same order of things. Imagine giving the date of the invasion of Iraq, your grandma's birth or American independence in such a manner. And then try to explain this to someone from another country. In the chaos that followed the death of Alexander the Great in Babylon in 323 BCE, all this changed. One of Alexander's Macedonian generals, who would go on to win an enormous kingdom stretching from Bulgaria to Afghanistan, introduced a new system for reckoning the passage of time. It is known, after him, as the Seleucid Era. This was the world's first continuous and irreversible tally of counted years. It is the unheralded ancestor of every subsequent era system, including the Christian Anno Domini system, our own common era, the Jewish era of creation, the Islamic Hijra, the French Revolutionary Era, and so on. The Seleucid Era began from year 1, set at Seleucus-Inocator's arrival in Babylon in spring 311 BCE, and continued counting, getting bigger each year. N+1. At the death of Seleucus I, his son Antiochus I did not restart the clock, and nor did any of his successors. For the first time in history, historical time was marked by a number that never restarted, reversed, or stopped. It is still going. This was time as we know it 2019, 2020, 2021, and so on, a transcendent, universal, absolute, freestanding, regularly increasing number. It was unconnected to political events, the life cycle of rulers or conquest. It was not dependent on an imperial bureaucracy or a scribal elite. It could be used at distance to correlate events. Most importantly, as a regularly increasing number, the Seleucid era permitted an entirely new kind of predictability. It had been impossible for a subject of, say, the elderly Nebuchadnezzar II, in the 40th year of his reign, he reigned for 43 years, to confidently and accurately conceive, name and hold in the imagination a date several years, decades, or centuries into the future. Now, because of the Seleucid era, this was easy, unproblematic, and uniform for every subject of the Seleucid kings. One of the Norwegian author Karl Ove Knausgaard's recent novels has an image that captures the force of this change. It was as if a wall had been removed in the room they inhabited. The world no longer enveloped them completely. There was suddenly an opening. Their glance no longer met any resistance, but swept on and on through more of the same. All this would be an interesting aspect of intellectual history, without greater social significance, were it not for two additional factors. First, the Seleucid era was only and exclusively materialized as number. In whatever script the Seleucid era number was recorded and, given the vast expanse of the Seleucid Empire, we have it attested in the Greek, Akkadian, Phoenician and Aramaic counting systems the year's numerical value was universally stable. That's to say, within the extraordinary diversity of the extended imperial territories, the Seleucid era, as a regular and homogeneous counting system, achieved a regulating and homogenizing force. Second, these Seleucid era year numbers were marked onto an unprecedented range of public, private and mobile platforms. Era dates were affixed to market weights, jar handles, coinage, building constructions, temple offerings, seal rings, royal letters, civic decrees, tombstones, tax receipts, priest lists, boundary markers, astronomical reports, personal horoscopes, marriage contracts and much, much more. In our own world, filled with ubiquitous date marks, it is easy to underestimate the sheer novelty, and so historical significance, of this mass year marking. But, in the ancient world, this was without precedent or parallel. In no other state in the ancient Mediterranean or West Asia did rulers and subjects inhabit spaces that were so comprehensively and consistently dated. Why does all this matter? While chronology and dating might at first seem not the most exciting of things, they are the stuff that history is made on, for dates do two things. They allow things to happen only once, and they insist on the ordering and interrelation of all happenings. Every event must be chained to its place in time before it becomes an available object of historical articulation. And the modes by which we date the world, by which we apprehend historical duration and the passage of time, frame how we experience our present, conceive a future, remember the past, reconcile with impermanence, and make sense of a world far wider, older, and more enduring than any of us. Empires make claims to time and space. And then their subject populations push back the Seleucid era, this new and ubiquitous dating system that was driving forward into a future it had opened, proposed fundamentally new possibilities and problems of politics, history, and religion. While we ourselves are now at home in such a system, to the ancient world, used to its temporal enclosure, it was explosive. It was a situation that put enormous pressure on long-held notions of the future and the past and, I would suggest, one that generated new sites of contest between the Seleucid Empire and its subject peoples. Empires make claims to time and space. And then their subject populations push back. From the 2nd century BCE down to its ultimate demise in 64 BCE, the Seleucid Empire faced increasingly violent and assertive opposition from its subordinated communities in its heartland territories of the Levant, Babylonia, and western Iran. The most famous of these resistance movements was the Maccabean Revolt, when the Jews of Judea marched against the Seleucid armies of King Antiochus IV and his successors, liberating the Jerusalem Temple and eventually carving out an independent political space, the Hasmonean Kingdom, in the territory of modern Israel. These are the events still commemorated in the festival of Hanukkah. Such resistance to the Seleucids not only targeted their physical infrastructure, fiscal demands, colonial settlements, and this worldly assertions of political dominance. It also targeted the temporal order they had established. It is of the highest significance that our earliest historical apocalypses emerged within the Seleucid Empire, within this world newly filled with inexorably increasing date numbers. These historical apocalypses are textual compositions that run through a full and extended account of world history, from the deep reaches of the past, through a succession of kingdoms or historical periods, into the Seleucid Empire, and then to the predicted end of time itself. These works of end-time prediction do not appear before the Seleucid Empire, such as in the Babylonian or Persian kingdoms or in classical Greek city-states. They do not appear outside the Seleucid Empire, such as in the other Hellenistic kingdoms or at Rome. It is a phenomenon restricted to the Seleucid Empire's subject populations. The theological and political roots of apocalyptic eschatology, as this end times literature is known, are complex and multiple. An entire subfield of Second Temple and early Christian scholarship is devoted to this problem of emergence. But the Seleucid era has played no role in existing research within either classical ancient history or biblical studies. I suggest that the ubiquitous visibility and bureaucratic institutionalization of an irreversible, interminable, and transcendent time system provoked, as a kind of reaction formation, fantasies of finitude among those who wished to resist the Seleucid Empire. The only way to arrest the open futurity and endlessness of Seleucid imperial time was to bring time itself to a close. The most famous of these early apocalyptic works, and the only one canonized as scripture, is the Book of Daniel in the Hebrew Bible. This is the easiest biblical book to date, for it delivers, in the voice of the ancient seer Daniel, an account of world history that is basically accurate up to 165 BCE and wildly inaccurate after 165 BCE. In 165 BCE, the Jews of Judea, under the leadership of Judas Maccabee, were seeking to throw off the yoke of the Seleucid Empire, so it was composed at a time of military conflict. The Book of Daniel contains a number of very famous episodes, including Daniel in the lion's den, the writing on the wall at Belshazzar's feast, and the arrival of one like the Son of Man to punish four monstrous beasts emerging out of the chaos waters. Here, let us look a little at the multi-metallic statue in chapter 2 of the Book of Daniel, likely the earliest apocalyptic passage in Judaism. The narrative runs as follows. King Nebuchadnezzar II, the greatest of Babylonian kings from 4 centuries before the book's composition, is troubled in his sleep by a terrifying dream. So, when he wakes up, he summons his full department of Eastern Mantic experts, Egyptian magicians, Akkadian astrologers, Babylonian sorcerers, and Chaldeans. The king demands that this faculty of scholars not only interpret his dream, but first tell him its contents. When the wise men of Babylon protest at the unfeasibility of such a challenge, Nebuchadnezzar condemns them all to death. On the eve of the mass execution of scholars, the content of the dream and its meaning is revealed to Daniel, a Judean exile living in the Babylonian court. And so, the next day Daniel interrupts the punishment and speaks before the king. You, O king, were watching, and behold, a single great statue. This statue, mighty and exceedingly dazzling, stood before you, and its appearance was dreadful. The head of this statue was of pure gold, its breasts and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze. Its legs were of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You were watching until a stone was cut out, not by human hands, and it struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and broke them into pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed all as one, and became like the chaff on the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, and not a trace of them was found. And the stone, which struck the statue, became a great mountain, and it filled the whole earth. Daniel then interprets it as follows. Nebuchadnezzar, and his Babylonian empire, are the head of gold. The Babylonian kingdom will fall to another empire, the Medes of the Zagros mountains, represented by the silver chest and arms. Then a third kingdom, represented by bronze, will rule over all the earth. This is the Persian Empire founded by Cyrus the Great. Finally, there will be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron. As Daniel explains, just as iron shatters everything, so this kingdom will break and crush all these former states. This is the kingdom of Alexander the Great, and his Seleucid successors. Yet it is divided upon itself, and toppling on clay feet. History appears here, perhaps for the first time, as a closed totality. Ordered, whole, complete, head to toe. Daniel concludes his exposition by elucidating the function and identity of the stone that destroys the statue and grows into a mountain. In the days of those kings, the Seleucids, the god of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will it be left to another people, but it will itself endure forever. Unlike the other empires, which get conquered and replaced by earthly powers, the end of the Seleucid Empire brings about the end of history itself. This vision, and there are several others like it in the book, orders history into a set of 4 successive empires: Babylonia, Media, Persia, and the Seleucids. Earthly empire as a whole gets symbolized as a grand statue made of processed materials, metals and burnt clay. It is transitory, destructible, unstable, and idol-like. Then that history gets destroyed and replaced by the heavenly, eternal kingdom, a natural stone, unchanging and unworked by human hands. History appears here, perhaps for the first time, as a closed totality. Ordered, whole, complete, head to toe. The vision projects a viewing gaze, for both Nebuchadnezzar and us, that is exterior and out of time. It opens a representation of providential time, of history as revelation. In a world coordinated to the Seleucid timeline and pervaded with assertions of monarchic agency, this apocalyptic vision reveals the ultimate and underlying sovereignty of God. The theological lesson of the episode is given programmatic, theological formulation in Daniel's Thanksgiving prayer, which he delivered after the mystery of Nebuchadnezzar's dream was revealed to him. Let the name of God be blessed from eternity and for eternity, for the wisdom and the power are His. He is the one who changes the times and the seasons, who removes kings and establishes kings. As a genre, the historical apocalypses that emerged in Seleucid Judea, Babylonia, and Iran staged a battle between king and god over the control of time and the architecture of history, exposing the claims of empire as illusory, and relocating the fate of nations to heaven. For the Seleucid Empire, as we have seen, time was transcendent and disinterested. The future was monotonist and disenchanted. Temporal texture was depersonalized. There was no possibility of restart. Worst of all, there was an endlessness that, by implication, would overwhelm eternity. Seleucid time was a mere passing, and so a loss. Tick, 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 tick. The historical apocalypses, by contrast, presented an image of time in which everything, including the future, was already determined. Where all that happened to you, happened for you. History was shaped, directed, and reaching toward a conclusion. All events, however dislocated, were part of a single story, a total history. Above all, these historical apocalypses called forth the end of days, in this example, the stone that destroys earthly empire. Not only did this fantasize the destruction of the Seleucid Empire, it also brought the new experience of time to a close. The end times achieved a kind of temporal integration, like the backing a mirror needs if we are to see anything. They converted the experience of one thing after another into a narrative plot. No longer was time passing away, empty and irredeemable, tick tick tick. It now had meaning and an ending, tick-tock. Paul J. Kozman. 9. What is the future of the universe? Well, using some science we can make a few predictions. In 2061, Halley's Comet will return again. In 2178, Pluto will complete its first orbit since discovery. In 2300, after traveling billions of kilometers, Voyager 1 will finally reach the Oort cloud. In 50,000 years, the star VY Canis Majoris will explode in a supernova. The explosion will outshine the rest of the Milky Way. In 75,000 years, a new Hawaiian island will surface. In 100,000 years, many of today's constellations will be unrecognizable. In 1,000,000 years, 2 of Uranus' moons will collide. The planet can't catch a break. In 50 million years, the Martian moon Phobos will slowly break up. So Mars will get its own ring. In 100 million years, as Mars gains a ring, Saturn will slowly lose them. Oddly, Saturn will spend most of its life without rings. It's just a phase. In 180 million years, the Moon continues gradually slowing down the Earth. Days become 25 hours long. Hopefully, work hours don't also increase. In 600 million years, the last total solar eclipse happens. Since the Moon is further away, total solar eclipses will no longer be possible. Don't forget your glasses. This is one you don't want to miss. In 800 million years, as the Sun becomes brighter, photosynthesis is no longer possible on Earth. Without plant life, all animals go extinct. And single-cell organisms dominate the Earth once again. In 1.1 billion years, the Sun will be 10% brighter. The average temperature on Earth will reach 47 degrees Celsius, or 116 degrees Fahrenheit. And so the oceans will evaporate. But on the bright side, Mars will enter the habitable zone and could provide a new home. In 5 billion years, the Andromeda Galaxy will collide with the Milky Way. And our new home galaxy will be called Milkdromeda. We will gain 1 trillion neighboring stars. Anyone left will see an incredible night sky. In 7 billion years, as the Sun becomes a red giant, it grows to 256 times its current size. After billions of years of providing energy to the Earth, the Sun eats the Earth. It was a good run, but the Earth was freeloading for too long. The Sun also eats Mercury and Venus for good measure. In 8 billion years, after the Sun's rampage, it cools down and becomes a white dwarf star. Any remaining life will need to get a lot closer to stay warm. In 450 billion years, the 50-plus galaxies in the local group merge. The group is back together. In 1 trillion years, radiation left over from the Big Bang becomes undetectable, making it harder for future civilizations to learn about the universe. In 10 trillion years, red dwarf stars turn into the first ever blue dwarf stars. And in 100 trillion years, the gas clouds needed to make stars are depleted. Somewhere in the universe, the last star is born. And soon only white dwarf, brown dwarf, and neutron stars are left. In 1015 years, everything outside the local group is impossible to reach due to the expansion of the universe. Even the speed of light won't be fast enough to reach distant galaxies. In 1017 years, white dwarf stars cool to black dwarf stars. The universe is dark. The only natural light comes from the occasional supernova. In 1030 years, black holes are the only things remaining, and they are massive. But even they slowly evaporate from Hawking radiation. In the last few seconds of a black hole's life, it will emit a burst of light, providing the last light in the universe, like a final firework show. But each firework billions of years apart. After that the universe is basically dead, with nothing of interest happening. But don't worry, there's plenty of time left. If the life of the universe was a year, you're living in the first millisecond of January 1st. So enjoy the ride. Neil Agarwal, 10. Reward for the award. December 3rd is celebrated the world over with events and functions honoring the disabled community. NIAPD, National Institute for the Empowerment of Persons with Visual Disabilities, selected, invited, and paid for my ticket to attend the function in Dehradun. On December 2nd, I left Bangalore for Dehradun via Delhi. The journey was pleasant with no hiccups. NIAPD, being a government organization, had asked me to book the Air India flight and that I would be reimbursed later. On December 3rd, Dipendra Manaka from Saksham. Pankaj Sinha, a lawyer. Barka from Bethany Society in Shillong. Prajapathy, and I, M.S. Madhu Singhal from Mitra Jyothi received the Excellence Awards. A vice-chancellor from a prestigious university graced the function and also gave away the Excellence Awards. Children from the school run by NYEPT performed a cultural program that was entertaining. On December 4, I received a call from Air India stating that the flight had been delayed. They offered to fit me in the morning flight, the next day. I had to attend an urgent meeting the following day. So, it was crucial for me to leave the same day. Repeated calls to the helpline didn't yield any positive results. The original flight was at 6:30 p.m. Hoping that I would get at least a flight in some other airlines, I reached the airport at 3:15 p.m. 2 staff from NYEPT and a driver were also with me. I instructed the lady staff from NYEPT to talk to the airlines about my situation and also to ask for a wheelchair. Neither did they favorably consider my request, nor did they send a wheelchair to the car. I have severe pain in the legs and also had suffered fractures in my legs last year. With great difficulty, I managed to enter the reception area. When I explained my situation, they told me to sit and that the concerned staff had gone for lunch. They took my ticket and told that they would get things sorted out. Even after an hour when they didn't attend to me, I was frustrated and got up. "Excuse me." I cried out 2 or 3 times to get anybody's attention. 2 staff came to me. They said that the flight would now take off at 8 o'clock and that arrangements would be made to put me on the flight to Bangalore next day at 6 a.m. I requested that I be provided a hotel to stay the night. As I had leg pain, I needed to stretch my legs and have at least 4 to 5 hours of rest. They assured that they would do the same and that a note would be sent to the Delhi office to take care of the hotel details. Finally, they took me to the aircraft. The bus that ferried us to the aircraft had a very high step, and it was very difficult to get on board and also to exit the bus. The aircraft, being a small one had to climb very high and narrow steps, not to mention that it was difficult and dangerous for a blind and senior citizen like me. Disembarking from the plane was equally dangerous and problematic. I reached Delhi at 9 p.m. There too, they made me to sit for an hour with no updates being communicated. Finally, at 10 p.m., they took me to the departure lounge, gave me the boarding pass for the next leg of the journey to Bangalore, and told me to make myself comfortable at the lounge. My request for a hotel room fell into deaf ears. The whole night, I was confined to a 2-seater sofa where I barely was able to stretch my painful legs. I would alternate between sitting, standing, or lying in an uncomfortable position. The whole experience left me tired and drained. At 5:45 in the morning, I was taken to the aircraft for my onward journey. Where has gone the empathy to the Divyang, let alone a fellow human being? What is the use of awards when basic courtesies can't be met? Or is this, my friends, the reward for the award? Ms. Madhu Singhal, founder and managing trustee of Mitra Jyothi, 11 Receip Corner Chukku coffee. In most of the Tamil and Malayala family it is a common drink. The ingredients which we are using in this recipe are good for cold, cough, viral fever, digestion and also for the boost or our immunity. It will also act as an antibiotic. Ingredients: 1 chukku, dry ginger in English known as shunti in Kannada 50 grams, 2 dhaniya seeds, 50 grams, 3 pepper, 3 teaspoons, 4 saunf, 2 teaspoons.